Morning, everybody. Hope you're all okay and have had a lovely weekend. Here we are ready to do some more maths. We're going to start off with our Fab 4 like last week. So let's take a look. We're going to be looking at equivalent fractions and decimals today. So you can see 4 decimals on your screen. And what I would like you to do is to tell me what the equivalent fraction is to that decimal. Now, if you find that really easy, you can see that there's a deepening activity on the right-hand side where I'd like you to simplify that fraction to its lowest form. So you've got to think really carefully about what the common factor is between the numerator and the denominator. So if you pause your video, give yourselves no more than 4 minutes and then unpause to see the answers. Okay, well done. So hopefully here you've got some answers. So 0.25 is the same as 25 hundredths, which can be simplified to a quarter because we can divide both of them by 25. 0.6 is the same as 6 tenths, which can be simplified to 3 fifths because they can both be halved. 0.95 is 95 over 100, which is the same as 19/20. The common denominator there, sorry, the common factor was the 5s. They could both be divided by 5s. And the final one is 975 thousandths, which can be simplified to 195 over 200 and again to 39 over 40. All right, so what are we going to learn today? We're going to be looking at how to convert fractions into decimals. And in order to do that, we're going to try and make links between the fractions and the decimals by dividing and finding equivalents to give us some help along the way. This is going to be the first part of like a 2-part lesson. So to start off with then, here we've got Sophia, who's in a science lab, and she's got a flask of blue liquid. You can just about see that it says she's got 1 litre of liquid in there. Now she's going to pour some of that liquid into beaker A and some of it into beaker B. So here's that information. She's going to pour 1/10 of a litre of liquid into beaker A, and then she's going to pour 3/4 of a litre into beaker B. Now, the difficulty that we've got here is that it's telling you how much she's pouring in fractions, but on the side of the flasks that she's pouring into, they are written in decimals. So we've got to figure out, well, how much is that? How much is 1/10 of a litre? So let's have a look. So for the first one, we're going to think about beaker A, which is 1/10 of a litre. And I think it's important to remember that 1 litre is the same as 1,000 millilitres. So to help us, I think it's useful for this one to draw our place value grid, because 1/10 we can very easily put on there and that becomes 0.1. So we know that 1/10 is the same as 0.1 of a litre. So that means on her beaker, she's poured into there 0.1 of a litre, only a little bit in that one. She will record 0.1 litres for beaker A. Now, if we look at beaker B, she's pouring 3/4 of a litre into beaker B. Now, with 3/4, fractions like 1/4, 1/2, and 3/4, they're ones that we encourage you to try and just learn and remember them as a decimal. So we should all know that 1/2 is the same as 0.5, and 1/4, which is half of a half, is the same as 0.25. And using that knowledge, if you multiply that by 3, we know that 3/4 is the same as 0.75. So that means in beaker B, if she's pouring 3/4 of a litre, that's the same as 0.75 litres. Okay, so now we know how much she's pouring into each of those beakers. However, let's think what the question was asking us at the beginning. It was actually asking us how much liquid is left in the 1 litre flask. And if I just move my head, we can see the flask there. That's what we started with. She's put 0.1 of a litre into beaker A, 0.75 of a litre into beaker B. And now we want to know in this flask over here, how much liquid is left. So what have we got to do? Well, the first thing we've got to do is add the amount that's been poured into those 2 beakers. So 0.1 add 0.75 is the same as 0.85 litres that have been poured out of the flask. So how am I going to work out then what is left in the flask now? Have a little think. Pause the video if you need to. What's the calculation I'm going to do to decide how much liquid is left behind in that flask. So here we go. The calculation is that you need to take away 0.85 from 1 litre, okay, because that's going to tell us what there is left. And we're going to have 0.15 litres left behind in the flask. All right, so there you had to do quite a few different steps. You had to figure out the conversion of the fractions into decimals, then add them together, take it away before you get your final answer. So you've really got to think carefully through each stage of the question. Now then, this here we've got a weight on a digital scale which has got 355 thousandths of a kilogram, and it's asking how much will that show on the display. Now on the table on the side it's broken it down into saying, well, how many tenths are there, how many hundredths are there, how many thousandths are there. Now you can decide that, have a go at thinking about what those phases are, or you can just think, well, because it's over 1,000 kilograms, I think it's just as easy to think, well, I know that on here 0.355, it means that I've got 3 in my tenths column. Let me just get my pointer up so I can write it on here. So I've got 3 tenths, haven't I? I've got 5 hundredths and I've got 5 thousandths. All right, so that means that on my display I've got 0.355 kilograms. So if it is over 1,000, you don't necessarily need to do this bar model, but it might help you to think about all the different parts that are made up of that number. Now then, final think together. This one here is looking at fractions that we've got to convert into decimals that maybe are a little bit more tricky because they're not over 10, 100 or 1,000, so their denominators are different. Now the first one that we're going to look at is 6/20. Now how do we write that as a decimal? So if you have a look at my chart that I've got here, you can see that along the bottom we've got the decimal numbers written. Above that we've got it divided into 20ths, then divided into tenths, and then it shows the one whole along the top. Now if we want to know how 6/20 looks as a decimal, we can do it like this. So we're going to count 6/20 along. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we can see that 6/20 is the same as, could you see up here, it's the same as 3 tenths. So it's like we've shaded in 1, 2, 3, and we know that we can actually halve the 6 and the 20 and it will become 3 tenths. And that then shows that our decimal value will be 0.3 because we have 3 in our tenths column. Now, when it comes to 7/20, it's a little bit more confusing because if we go back to our 20ths, you see I've added one more, there's 7/20. Now, it isn't at 0.3 and it's not at 0.4. Now, I often think if we have a placeholder and we put it into our hundredths column, so we almost make 0.3, 0.30, we make 0.4, 0.40. Now we can see that 7/20 falls exactly halfway between those. Now halfway between 0.30 and 0.40 is 0.35. There it is written as a decimal. I sometimes think if you put that placeholder into your hundredths column for these ones, helps you to think in your mind more about where halfway falls. Now I'd like you to pause the video and have a go at working out 16/20 and 17/20 on your own. Have a go, use this chart to help you count along and then unpause when you've had a go. All right, I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so hopefully you've had a little try. Now I'm going to carry on counting along my 20ths. I've already got with my orange up to 7/20, so I'm going to keep going. So 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. The 16/20 is the same as 8 tenths, which you can see along the top. So now we'd have to change up here that we would have shaded 8 of these tenths in. I'm just going to do a line because it's a bit easier with this mouse, like that. And so 8 tenths, which correlates at the bottom here to 0.8. So we know that 16/20 is the same as 0.8. 17/20, I'm adding one more. So I've got the same issue that I had when I did 7/20. Now this time it's fallen between 0.8 and 0.9. So our decimal for this one is going to be 0.85 because it's halfway between those numbers. Okay, hope that is all clear and makes sense. So for today, you're going to turn to pages 15 to 17 in your Power Maths books, and it's titled Fractions as Decimals 1, because we're going to do the next part of this for tomorrow. If you crack on and get through all of it, have a go, come back to the video, pause this page to have a look at the challenge, and then send me in your photographs of your work so I can see how you're getting on. All right, good luck, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.